Which philosophy dominates today's figurative painters? Immanuel Kant's metaphysical approach to aesthetics has had a huge impact on the art world over the last 2 centuries, to the extent that no one questions the validity of the word art, artist, originality, genius, which had the sole purpose of deconstructing the classical European tradition. But what about Aristotle, the Greek thinker who was crucial for paving the way for the Renaissance, at a time when masters like Michelangelo copied directly from antiquity into his own work? Self-expression, lack of craft, disinterestedness, they are all criteria derived directly from Kant's Critique of Judgment from 1790. Aristotle, on the other hand, emphasizes the value of craftsmanship and storytelling. He also stresses the importance of imitation of nature as being the poet's foremost principle. This ties him directly to the Kitsch criticism of lack of originality. We are here in Leeuwarden at the 2018 Representational Art Conference to find out which philosophy dominates today's representational painters. Okay, hello, what is your name?
I'm Peter Trippi.
And what do you do?
I'm editor-in-chief of Fine Art Connoisseur magazine in New York.
Jorge Egea.
Okay, I'm not going to repeat that. Nice to meet you.
Lori Escalera.
And who are you?
I don't know.
Oh, you're philosophical already.
It's David Vecht.
Nice to meet you. What do you do?
I'm a stonemason and an artist.
My name is Erica Hyatt.
And who are you?
I am a painter. I'm an American painter living in the Netherlands.
Are you enjoying the conference?
Absolutely, absolutely.
There's a lot of focus on philosophy at this conference, and in that spirit, I would like to ask you 12 questions that relate to 2 very different ways of thinking regarding aesthetics. Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm very curious.
Ready. Born ready.
First question. What is the goal? An imitation of nature or something as genuine as nature itself?
Something as genuine as nature itself.
The replication of nature, mimesis, I think would be the most natural way to bring something new into being, which is poesis.
I would say an imitation of nature.
It's difficult. An imitation of nature.
I would say the imitation of nature is what compels me to paint.
Something that's as genuine as nature itself.
Something as genuine as nature itself. Something that reads convincingly as if it were real, whether it actually is real or only exists in the artist's imagination until the painting is finished.
An imitation of nature.
As genuine as nature itself.
Something as genuine as possible.
It's the imagination of a second world, a parallel world, who nobody can feel, who nobody can see, and the existence of it is an experience after death.
It's impossible to imitate nature, but you should be at least approach being as honest as nature is.
Okay, so you will answer as genuine as nature.
I think so.
I don't think you can get as genuine as nature. I think that it's an imitation.
How would you choose what's more genuine than nature? That's silly.
What is the appeal of the Mona Lisa? Something divergent or that which is familiar to us?
Do you mean to me or to other people?
I mean in general, or if it's easier to you.
To me, I would say it's something that's familiar to me.
She smiles a bit in the same way as my youngest daughter does. So that is for me the big appeal in it.
It seems like a false division. Both are true.
You're not leaning more towards one?
I can't lean more to one than the other.
Familiar.
I think it's just which is familiar to us.
That which is familiar.
Familiar to us.
I would say divergence in terms of the way most people look at her. She's a very special lady, so in that regard, it's a special answer. I would imagine that in that case, it's more about, there's something different here. We've seen many portraits of women of that period. What makes this one distinctive? And that, I think, is divergence.
I would say probably familiar in the sense that I feel like there's an intrinsic sense of humanity, but I get it even just through the surface of her skin and such. So I feel like Yeah, it's a difficult answer, but I would say it's familiar.
The appeal is in the enigma, so it must be in the unfamiliar if I have to answer one side.
Okay. Is the act of painting a purpose in itself, or is the purpose of painting to utter universal truths?
I'm not a painter, so I can't be fully sure. It seems to me that there's a mix of the two, but it leans toward the latter.
I think the second one.
I would lean more towards universal truths.
That's tricky. I think I would go for universal truths, but that's a hard one.
I enjoy the practice of it, so I would say first and foremost that's why I do it.
I think it's a purpose in itself.
Painting is a welcome surface, right? It's the surface of water, and it can reflect ourselves back to us, so it doesn't have to be anything more than that.
You know, I think there's validity in the act of painting itself.
So you would pick that one?
I know that that's been used against us in the modernist age, but I do think that the skill itself can be an ends.
Well, you have to have a goal then, rather than just kind of stirring mud around. So I'd say utter universal truths.
To utter universal truths.
Utter universal truth. The purpose of painting is the purpose of painting.
If there is a universal truth, that's somewhere in between some billions of Milky Ways who are outside of what we cannot understand. It's of a size we cannot understand as a human being. So the painting is a purpose in itself.
If you stare at the landscape with a friend, do you see the same view?
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
No.
Oh, no.
No.
Depends on who the friend is.
Really?
But probably not.
No, we see different views.
No.
Why is that?
Because your personal experiences have led you to that moment.
Yes.
Many people answer no on this one.
Yeah. I would say that you see the same nature, at least the same landscape.
Well, I couldn't speak to what they see, but I should think that we are looking at the same view.
No,
Why?
because there are two different sets of eyes that see different things.
Nobody knows. Nobody even don't know if what I see as, for example, blue, nobody knows if my companions see the same color.
Yes, generally speaking. I mean, you'll have different experiences, and that plays into it, but...
Well, you see the same view?
Yes, yeah, I would say so.
Yes.
Yeah. It's empirical. It's in front of us. And
So we can sort of agree that we see a tree?
I would hope so.
As a painter, can you improve upon nature?
No.
Yes.
Yes, I would say so.
No.
You have that high regard for nature?
Yes.
The greatest masters, that sounds reasonable, yes.
Yes, with skill and selective use of what details you choose to paint, you could make an image that is kind of more crafted towards human beauty. So yes, it would appear more beautiful.
That would be a pretty large task.
But can you?
One can try, but I think there isn't anything more beautiful than nature, so you continue to strive to learn from nature and replicate.
You can change things to be less distracting, but I don't think you can improve upon nature, no.
I think that you can extract what's most beautiful from nature purposefully as a painter.
Which means improve.
Yes.
Yeah, I see a lot of painters who paint things that are more beautiful than nature themselves. And what kind of tricks they use, I don't understand always.
No, you can only if you're trying to copy nature, it'll only be a poor imitation. And I don't think copying nature is the point. The point's to communicate something, and nature should be a teacher or a guide if you're trying to paint representationally.
No, you can interpret nature.
Not improve.
No, you cannot improve it.
Are the greatest works of history beyond comparison?
No.
Every great artwork is unique. Don't need to be compared.
No, I think that some of the greatest works can still be created today.
Yeah, I think that to a certain extent, a masterwork for all time is going to be completely unique, and it will be similar in one form or another. Like maybe it's an altarpiece and it looks in shape like another altarpiece, but it's going to be beyond great.
Beyond compare.
You think so?
I think so.
The Scream by Edvard Munch, nothing comes close to it, and because of its enormous stature, it is also something. I think why should you try to compare?
Well, if contemporary work can reach the same level of excellence, then there would be a comparison.
Can you compare everything?
Yes.
You would compare a Rembrandt with Nordrum, for example?
Yeah, can't we?
Each of the renowned masters have something that's beyond comparison, like not existent in any other work, which makes them remarkable and uncomparable.
If the greatest things have already been done, then what's the point of still striving to do something great yourself?
It's possible to compare an old master painting to a painting made today.
I think it's possible. I think it's possible as long as you're talking to an audience that has visual literacy skills.
No, because it seems like the judgment of whether a work of art is great or not seems to vary over time. And we've had examples of this, like Bouguereau. In his lifetime, he was considered fabulous, and then he falls like a rock. The Pre-Raphaelites, I'm sure 20th century artists are going to fall like a rock in the next 30 years. People are going to lose interest in this.
Maybe less?
I hope.
Should your work be your signature, or should you say as little as possible in your own voice?
Oh. I would think the best works of art are absolutely unique, that only certain individuals could have made them, that there's this kind of voice within them. I think that if someone is painting in the style of a previous person, that's fine, but they need to find that tweak that makes it their own.
I think your work should be your signature.
The work should be the signature.
Why is that?
Well, it's your work. I don't know.
I think the last one.
As little as possible.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
As little as possible.
Nature is unoriginal.
I think each painting is going to have a signature in it. So just by the fact that it's done by my hand, there is a sense of a signature. But overall, I would say that my goal is not to have a signature on it as much as just to be as true to nature as I can be.
Should you aim for originality, or should you try to avoid it?
I would try to avoid it. You say as little as your own voice if you're trying to imitate nature, because everything else would be just, if it's your own voice, it would be some kind of subjective overlay on top. It would be a distraction.
No, the former. You want to say your work should be your signature?
Okay, why?
Because it's all about my own voice. That's what painting is. It's about my voice. It's about me painting.
I think if you're not expressing your own ideas or your own interpretation of things, then you're just a copyist. You're not a painter. You're not an artist.
As little as possible, definitely.
Okay, why?
Well, I will talk about that tomorrow. There's many virtues towards being impersonal and not letting your personality be in your pictures.
I think Because I believe in painting the visual impression, that's my personal artistic philosophy, that saying as little as possible in my own voice and sharing a moment of what I'm seeing with others through my painting is what I aspire to.
Is talent given by birth, or can you achieve excellence through practice?
I think that there are people who have a higher visual intelligence than others, but I do think that overall practice is going to be what gets you to a level of professionality or a level of excellence.
Through practice.
Sure, maybe some people have a natural inclination to draw, but it's worthless unless they practice.
Practice.
By practice.
Never ever underestimate how incredibly hard they work. I've seen many artists from very close by. I have many artists visiting me at home. I take them along. I think of myself, I'm a hardworking businessman. Oh, you won't believe how hard a good artist has to work.
The talent you have, that's a gift. You can develop it, but okay. The talent you don't have, you have to develop. If you understand what I mean.
So you would always rely on the development?
Of course.
I think it's dedication. I think everyone has talent if they want.
I think some people just seem to be naturally extraordinarily gifted, and they're kind of remarkable and extraordinary. But quite a lot of people can learn to be pretty good at painting. You know, so I've got a bit of both, but I'm leaning towards excellence. Leaning towards the born with talent.
I myself would rather see genius, and I'll give you an example of that. I don't really like sculpture, but the big sculpture survey at MoMA like 3 years ago was magical because you could see the man was a genius. He was incredibly inventive. A lot of it was badly made, but I really stopped caring because I could see that there was this extraordinary personality pushing out the work year after year. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go with that.
No one is born knowing how to do anything. When babies are born, they don't even know how to contain their saliva or their own excrement in their own body. They learn these things later. Nobody is born with talent. Talent, inborn talent is a myth. Early training is the key to the development of talent. We look at people like Mozart. His education was begun when he was still an infant. He was being taught music when he was in the crib.
Is it possible to make noble depictions of Hitler or Stalin?
Yes, of course.
I think it would be extremely controversial, but I think it's possible to make a noble depiction of anything.
Yeah, you can.
You think it's possible?
I think so.
Yeah, aesthetically, I would say you could do a nice portrait of either one of them.
Yes, that's in the hand of the painter or sculptor.
Yes.
If the artist has the talent, an artist can confer nobility on whatever his subject might be.
And Trump.
Yes, I didn't dare to say that.
Oh yes. Yeah, I've seen some beautiful paintings by all of them.
I've had a long discussion recently with a good friend of mine about the books of Knut Hamsun, and some of these books are fantastic. But then when you study who Knut Hamsun was, what he stood for, what his thoughts were, for me the books are not good anymore.
That's a tough one. No, probably not. You could paint or sculpt idealized versions that make them look grand, but in terms of true nobility, no, because I'm speaking for myself here, always know what that person did.
Yeah, because you should see them or see their art as the art that it is and not the person behind it.
I wouldn't want to paint a noble description of Hitler now.
But do you think it would be possible based on your understanding of the word noble?
No, it's not possible.
Who's more qualified to judge a sculpture, a sculptor or the one who's trained in critique?
As a matter of fact, I believe the sculptor, another sculptor.
Sculptor.
Obviously a sculptor.
Why is that? He's not trained in critique.
Well, obviously a sculptor.
Yeah, I'm going to say an artist or somebody who actually has the skills is better at understanding it and judging it.
A good sculptor.
Okay, a good sculptor before a good critic.
Yes.
I would then say I put the emphasis on the sculptor because he or she is going to be able to look at that other person's work, sculpture, and say it was made well, it was not made well, it has this aspect to it that is distinctive and therefore respectable.
I think Odd Nerdrum has had a quote of that you should know the craft, or you should try the crafts yourself, and then you would be a better critic.
A critic is more qualified to judge because they are in the position to critique. So by definition of the words, it would be your critic.
Okay.
Neither the audience and neither the sculptor, because they're emotionally tied to what they're looking at.
You know, again, it comes down to visual literacy. We have a community of art critics who are mostly untrained. It used to be that the art critics, like John Ruskin comes to mind, a great British art critic.
Yeah, he painted.
Yeah, he was a painter. He was a trained painter and a writer, and he believed that you couldn't be a writer without being trained as in draftsmanship either, because it taught you how to really see and describe what it was that you intended.
Often critics or philosophers like myself have a tendency to complicate matters that are practical, and crafts are practical, and therefore it's useful to know the crafts before talking about it.
Should the work be judged with enthusiasm or by contemplation?
Contemplation. I think that's always going to be deeper.
Maybe contemplative reflection, but I like it's you bring everything you can to judgment.
I think both are important, but I do prefer contemplation. If you with contemplation mean more that you have a distance to your work, I would say with enthusiasm.
So I personally believe that artists they deserve enthusiasm.
First and foremost, it's enthusiasm, because it usually is something within me. Like enthusiasm, I think of it hits me deeper within, and then I have to contemplate afterwards. So it's almost like one, for me, comes first and then the other. So first and foremost, enthusiasm.
Well, I hope that the initial response to any work is some sort of enthusiasm, like some sort of response.
Enthusiasm is allowing your body to react to the physicality of work in a way that is engaging your full human experience.
Enthusiasm?
I'd say heart. You do enthusiasm with your heart because it's intuitive.
I think things that just are on the surface might be, people are more enthusiastic about them, but I think things that are maybe have deeper meaning or are a little bit more difficult, I'm going to go with contemplation.
Okay. That's hard. Now the last question. Ought the pupil to distance himself from his master?
Yes.
Yes.
Eventually.
Absolutely.
That was the most certain answer yet.
Of course. Otherwise, there's no uniqueness. Otherwise, you're just reappropriating the master.
If you're going to become a master yourself, you need to have your own, you stand on your own feet. And if you can do that close to the master, fantastic. And if you can't, then distance maybe is a wise choice.
Well, that ties into something broader that we've been discussing at this conference, the idea that it's perfectly understandable that a master trains a pupil and that the pupil needs to learn those ways first. The question then becomes, how does the pupil break away, as a child breaks away from a parent, to become distinctive? And it's not easy because there's so many tempting, delicious things in the master's procedure that the pupil might not want to leave behind. But it's going to happen if that is going to be an independent genius.
You can paint very similar. I think you will paint differently from your teacher automatically because you're a different person. But at the same time, it shouldn't be a goal to strive to be so different from your teacher.
Ought the pupil to distance himself from his master?
I don't think that's prudent.
No.
I don't think so. No.
Why? Many people answer yes on this one.
Yeah. Do you mean like distance in their work or personally or what?
Sort of a full package deal, I think.
Okay, if it's a good master, I think no. Then you should stay close.
Well, a master, he's a master, you know.
Yeah, then no.
There's a reason why you go to school and to go to a master. It's not to become yourself. It's to not become yourself.
The ultimate goal of a pupil is to surpass his master.
So not distance him, but surpass him.
Yes.
Would you advise a student to stick with his master or to leave him?
To leave him.
In the beginning, he has to learn from his master, and afterwards, when he has to follow his own way and find his own principles, his own system, his own ideas, his own signature.
Why is that?
Because it's not interesting to copy a master. It's interesting to show your own interpretation, to show your own identity.
Ought the pupil to distance himself from his master?
Eventually, yes. I think
Really? You're a teacher. Do you want that?
absolutely. Like I don't want a dependent brood of children around me. I want to send them off in the world successfully and let them discover and add things to.
But is that the same as distancing yourself from your teacher?
I think eventually you have to distance yourself because otherwise you become dependent on another critique and you never learn that individual critique. I definitely believe in education and efficiency in teaching, but I don't know how to teach independent thought that painters need in order to be successful long term.
So you would not be happy with Jan Bruegel? You would give him a hard time if you met him?
Well, I mean, that's a little unfair because,
Why is it unfair? He was a typical example of a person who did not take distance.
Yes. You're right. That's a perfect counterexample. So maybe I should hesitate to say there's only one way to train because, as we know, there's lots of successful ways and lots of different paths for people to move forward.
You still lean towards the distance?
Yes, because I think that was necessary for me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you got 9 on Immanuel Kant and 3 on Aristotle.
I have what? Sorry?
So the questionnaire is based on the aesthetics of Immanuel Kant and Aristotle, and you got 9 on Kant and 3 on Aristotle.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you. That's very cool.
Okay, I believe you got 10 on Aristotle and 2 on Kant.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, those just come naturally out of me. I don't necessarily think that they came out of a philosophy, but they are a philosophy, whether they are from one or the other. That's what I think, yeah.
Okay, you got 6 on Immanuel Kant and 6 on Aristotle. The two different aesthetics. You're very split. So either it is possible to have those two very different sets of ideas, or perhaps you should look into Aristotle and Kant again.
Well, yeah, I'm not surprised actually.
No?
No.
You are a very divided person?
No, but I think I consider both sides of the argument, and I generally speaking find Kant annoying. This disinterested interest, I don't like it.
Oh, no, but you answered Aristotle on that one, you know.
Oh, right, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Maybe the individuals are the ones who don't conform to your systematic division.
I don't think so. I think it's people who are people who haven't taken the test. You got 6 on Aristotle and 6 on Immanuel Kant.
Okay, well balanced perhaps.
Very balanced. 6 on Aristotle and 6 on Kant.
Okay.
You are a very divided person.
I hope.
Well, I side very firmly with here on the earth, not Plato and the hereafter.
Okay, you got 6 on Aristotle and 6 on Kant.
Thank you very much.
You are very divided.
Yeah, that's what I like also. I love to see things from one side and the other side.
Okay.
I hate Aristotle, so
You hate Aristotle?
I hate Aristotle, but Immanuel Kant is fine, but he didn't like women so much. He was a little misogynistic. He thought women had small brains. He didn't like the art of women.
I'm full of respect for both traditions, and I think that, Kant is problematic, no question about it, but it is something that we're living with in this era. So,
okay.
What can I say?
Thank you so much. Okay. Do you think that many people have ideas that are derived from certain philosophers that they have no idea about?
Yes. I think there's so much of 18th, 19th century academia that's been filtered into our culture that we're not perhaps as aware of. So I think we're influenced by lots of things that we're not even sure or not quite aware of how we're influenced.
For example, you spoke about that it was important to use your own voice. Do you think that is... Do you know where that idea comes from? Or is that something you've thought about yourself?
Probably from my expository writing class in university. There was a lot of talking about finding your voice, and my big question was, okay, if you find your voice, does it matter if you don't have anything to say? And maybe there's a combination, but I think it was from literature.
What I'd like to see is a better understanding of what the technical skills are in art, and how does society benefit from having both a classical tradition and to go along with some of this idea generating that has been the focus for the last 100 years.
Yeah, at the same time, I mean, let's take the Holocaust. Let's take a big example here. I mean, that is an example where there is a precedent of ideas that makes people do such things. And without drawing the line too close, the nonsense we've seen in the 20th century doubtless have derived from some ideas.
So I agree that there's an extremism that happened in the last 100 years. So, it used to be that artists all had access to 1,500 years and more of inherited artistic information. And with the modernist era, there's an idea that took root that if we train people, it'll ruin their creativity. And this was fine for one generation, but that generation who had classical training themselves, whatever, they didn't use it in their own work, but they also didn't train the next generation. So a few generations in, you had this extreme loss of knowledge, which is atrocious. As an educator, like that makes me very sad, and it's a real shame that this extreme belief eliminated much of the knowledge that we've ever had in art. So I don't advocate extremism, but I do feel like the solution of how do we move forward is let's advocate for good, quality, intellectual, technically skilled artwork, beauty. Let's help educate a population who has not had access to all this information so that we can really move art forward in a meaningful way.
Well, you got 12 out of 12 on Aristotle.
Ah, great.
Happy with it?
Yes, very happy.
But there's a bonus question. Are people with symmetrical faces stupid?
No.
Are there really symmetrical faces? Do they exist?
Some of them are.
But you wouldn't make it a rule?
No, there is no rule in that.
Okay.
Fortunately for you, because you have a harmonious face.
The same for you.
I mean, to me, it's anecdotal evidence. I really couldn't say. I haven't held a lot of mirrors up to faces to see just how subtle the asymmetry is. So a symmetrical face might look kind of dumb.
Are people with symmetrical faces stupid?
Yeah, they must be very dumb. I mean, I don't know. I've never thought about it before. I mean, I think lumpy people are more interesting generally, so I would go with that. Like people who have kind of interesting, kooky faces probably have more interesting brains because they've had to adapt. I mean, classically beautiful people probably swan through life.
Easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, there's kind of that. Symmetry hadn't occurred to me, but I suppose beauty in the conventional sense usually involves symmetry. So, I would go with the kooky person.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, I would say they are more smart.
Okay, that's definitely not Kant. Kant says that people with symmetrical faces are stupid.
Okay.
He says that people with symmetrical faces are stupid?
Yes, in the Critique of Judgment in the footnote.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow, what a silly thing to say.
Thank you.
Pleasure.